Hello, this is Miss Pat from Santa Maria Public Library. This week we're going to learn about bees in Science Scouts, why they're important to us and how we can help them. So our book this week is called Bee Dance by Rick Chrustowski. When sunlight warms your honeybee wings, off you go on flower patrol. Follow a sweet scent floating on air to find a honeybee gold mine. A prairie in bloom. Sip sugary nectar with your bendy straw tongue. Yum! Race home. Climb the beeswax comb. Excitement buzzes all around. The other bees know that you have news. Do the waggle dance, honeybee. Make a figure 8. Twirl in a circle. Wag your body up the middle run. Then twirl around the other side. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Waggle faster, honeybee. Buzz louder. Your dance points the way to the prairie. How long you waggle your body tells the others how far to go. Now the bees know just where to fly. Soon they see flowers reaching toward the sky. Go to work, forager bees. Collect nectar to make honey. Stuff pollen into baskets on your hind legs. Stay out late. Carry your heavy prize back to the hive. The last glow of sunset lights the way. Unload your cargo and store it in the combs. Then settle in for the night. See what they're carrying? I'm going to talk about that. When you wake up, warm your honeybee wings in the morning sun and dance the prairie jitterbug once again. Okay, so how come bees are important? Everybody's afraid of bees, right? And yes, they will sting if you, if you try and grab them, they will sting. However, they will not sting if they're honeybees and you don't try to grab them. Yellow jackets and wasps are a whole different story. Okay, so why are bees important? Well, honeybees are pollinators, right? Another big word. That means they go from plant to plant and they move the pollen from one flower to another flower. Okay, like flower here, they move it to somewhere else. And that makes it possible for all flowers and fruits and vegetables to grow. Okay, bees pollinate the clover and the alfalfa that the cows eat. So if they pollinate the food that we don't even eat, right? We don't eat the clover, the rabbits do, the cows do. We need the cows because they give us milk and cheese and ice cream and meat, right? 1 out of every 3 bites that you eat depends on pollination. If you drink apple juice, okay, or you drink milk, without bees, we don't get either one of those. Okay, so we need the hardworking bees and we need other pollinators. Unfortunately, they're disappearing. Okay, and because of that, it could affect foods like our apples, our almonds, strawberries, tomatoes. Okay, 85% of the plants on our planet exist because of the bees. right? And here's a picture of the bee pollinating the alfalfa, which feeds the cow, which makes our cheese. So the bees land on a flower and they get covered in this yellow dust, right? You guys might see some of that on your car sometimes, especially in the late spring. And then they go to this other flower and they move the dust from here to here. They move the pollen. They're packing it, but it's also covering their fuzzy bodies, right? And that's going to make, when the flower drops off, then it's going to turn into an apple or a strawberry or a tomato, right? All of those things start off as a flower. And if the bees don't get into that flower, then the flower just dies off and there's no food behind it. Okay, so we kind of need those for a reason. How come the bees are bee population that was declining? And it has been. Scientists and beekeepers have been noticing some of these bees go to sleep in the wintertime and they're not waking up. The whole hive, not just one or two bees, the whole hive. All right, and they think that's for a whole number of reasons. They think there's parasites that are invading their hive. Loss of habitat. There's not as many places for them to make a beehive because we're cutting down trees to build houses. And people don't want bees around their houses. So they're taking down they're squirting their bug spray and they're getting rid of bees. Right? And that's the next one, exposure to pesticides. So even though the problem is really important because we do need bees, not yellow jackets and wasps, but we do need the honeybees, it's still not too late to help them, right, and save our food. So this shows you lots of dead bees inside the beehive, inside the honeycomb. If we don't spray, right, we can spray wasp nests, but if we don't spray the honeybees nests and we don't pull out all the dandelions and put down weed spray, weed killer, they need those dandelions first thing in the spring so that they can start making their honey. And this is a bee bath because guess what? They need to drink too, and they drown easy. If they land in a puddle or in a pool, that's it. So the average beehive usually can house around 50,000 bees, right? Worker bees can go from one flower to another collecting nectar, and in one trip, they'll visit 50 to 100 flowers. So that could be 50 to 100 apples that grow because of one bee, right? Honeybees pollinate more than 100 different crops in the US. So this is one that you might see. This is a honeybee hive out in the woods. This is not one. If you see this, stay away from it. Okay, this is a wasp nest. We do not want to touch that. They will sting over and over and over, and there's no honey in there. But this, again, keep an eye out for bears. Bears like this. Okay, they eat this. And then just like in our story, we have beekeepers and they have these boxes and the bees will go into the boxes and they'll make these honeycomb. Okay, so we can get the wax and the honey from the bees in there. So they're all different kinds of nests. Don't go to that one. So there are 3 types of bees though in a hive. All right, one queen for the whole hive. Her job is to lay the eggs. Okay, she produces chemicals that guides the behavior, tells the other bees, oh, you know, I just laid you, you just hatched, you're a worker bee, you're a droner bee, this is what you're supposed to do. So the workers are all females. Their role is to, or their job is to go get food. They get the pollen and the nectar. They build and protect the hive. They clean and circulate the air, beating their wings. Okay, usually these are the only ones that we ever see flying around outside the hive. Okay, so anytime you see a bee outside, bumblebee outside the hive, okay, that's these ones right here. Okay, they're usually the females. They're doing all the work because the drones are the male bees. They're the ones inside and they're mating with the queen to make more eggs, more bees. Okay, but come wintertime, if you see any bees outside, when the hive goes into survival mode, the drones are kicked out. Okay, so they don't live past the summer. So the drones might stay inside with the queen all summer long and not do a whole lot, but they're also kicked out in the wintertime. Okay, and then come spring, the little eggs that hatched into males, they'll become the new males that stay with the queen, and the females will go back outside. They're the ones that are going to make the honey. So keep that in mind. Notice how long the queen bee is. Right? Bees don't just transport pollen between plants, they also bring it back to the hive for their food. Right? These pollen pellets that they bring back include nectar and account for 30% of their weight. Now remember in the book, we saw these little yellow pouches hanging off of them. This is what they fill up. Okay, they got little pouches on their back legs and they fill it up with pollen. So if you see these on a bee, one, you know it's a female bee, and two, it means that they're pretty much full and they're heading back to their hive. They're not going to bother you. Okay, unless you close your hand over it. You know that song, I'm bringing home a baby bumblebee? Don't do it. When you do this, they go into survival mode. They will sting you. They will die, but you get stung. Okay, so don't do that. If they land on you, they're going to sniff you. They're going to say, no pollen here, and then they're going to fly off. Okay, so what can we do to help? We can create a bee pond. Right? Bees can't swim. They can't get their wings wet. If they do, they drown. Okay, you find them in a pool and they're kind of moving, get them out in the sun. And then hopefully if nothing else comes by them and squashes them or eats them, their wings will dry out and they can go off. But most of the time they'll drown. They do need water, just like everything else on our planet, right? So we're going to fill a shallow pan with pebbles and water, and bees have someplace to land. So here, right, that was a very shallow dish. And you can see all the bees on it. They just filled it up with rocks and marbles, and they filled it up with water, and they can land on those rocks and marbles, and they can crawl down and drink some of the water. They can't land in the water. Okay, this is another one. This one they filled with moss and giant rocks and bark so that they can climb down. So we're going to make one of those. So if you guys come into the library, you're going to get a kit. It's going to have a plastic dish, and it's going to have some marbles and rocks. What you do is you can make any design you want on it. Okay, put those on there. You can just put them on there if you want, not do anything else with them. Okay, let's see, there you are. Okay, or you can glue them down. Okay, so these ones have been glued. Now, what you're going to do, put it outside, maybe buy some flowers somewhere in your garden, not underneath the tree because they don't really go to the trees unless they're apple trees or fruit trees, you know, but if it's a pine tree, they're not really going around the pine trees. But if you got flowers out there, little bushes that have flowers, put them out there by that. Put them on the ground, okay? And you're going to just add enough water to maybe cover the bottom. We don't want to cover the rocks, okay? We do not want to cover the rocks because then they can't land on the rocks. I don't know if you can see that. All right, so there is water here, but my rocks are dry, so they can land on any of these, and then they can kind of crawl down and they can get a sip. Now, because it's not a lot of water, it's going to evaporate very quickly on these very hot days. Or sometimes if we get a lot of rain, it's going to really fill out. If you get a lot of rain, pour some of it out. Okay, because remember, if your rocks are covered, they can't land there. And if they do land there, they're going to drown. We don't want them drowning. Okay, but we do want to fill it up. Maybe check it a couple times a day. Okay, put a little bit more water in. Don't put pool water in. Pool water is not good for them. Just like you're not supposed to drink pool water, they don't want to drink pool water either. Okay, but just put a little bit of water in. That gives them something to drink so that they can keep doing, because they got a lot of jobs to do, right? They got to visit 100 flowers a day. And then they got to bring it back, and then they got to make the honeycomb, and they got to make the wax. All your candles come from wax. Okay, your honey all comes from bees. Nobody else makes that. So that all comes from there. Any kind of food you make that uses honey comes from there. All the apples and strawberries And vegetables, cucumbers, tomatoes, all of that, watermelon, pumpkins, they all come from honeybees. If we don't give the honeybees some help, we're going to have a slight problem. So this is an easy way of doing that. Okay, you're just making a nice little honey bath any way you want. Okay, so hope you learned something. Remember, the next time you see those poor hardworking bees, okay, they're busy as a bee. They're doing a lot of work for us so that we can have food. All right, see you next week. Bye.